I think we're live now, Vince. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Leslie. Well, good afternoon, everyone, members of the committee, and hopefully a few members of the great British public out there looking at us, but we don't know for sure. You're very welcome. Just to remind you, this is unfortunately the last meeting of this council forever. And I think that's a very sad moment, but we'll come back to that later on. Apologies for absence then, please.
Thank you, Chairman. We have apologies from Councillor Gregor Hopkins, Councillor Fiona Baker and Councillor Lisa Samiotis.
Right, thank you very much. Has anyone any declarations of interest in any of the items we are about to discuss? No?
No.
Thank you. Item 2 then, minutes, which are in your pack or you've seen on your screens, page 5 to 10. We'll take them page by page. Page 1 then. Have you all been listed if you were in attendance at the last meeting? Page 6. Local Development Order, South Northamptonshire Council Business Strategy. Section 106 relating to health provision. Page 9, review of the committee work programme, and that's it. Can we agree that I could sign them on your behalf, please,
Yes.
at some date in the future before the end of the month, together with a few more I think I've got to sign off. Thank you. I know we don't, we're going on to urgent business. This isn't urgent business, but I would like to raise on page 6. On page 6, I did ask a question, and Jim, I think you've got some information for me. Have you?
I do, thank you, Chairman. This is the question around the number of people who are currently supported by the what's known as the Coronavirus Job Retention Scheme in South Northamptonshire. So the figures that we have, the latest figures was 5,500, but it only goes to November. That's to give you some context. The highest figure was 13,800 in June of last year. So the numbers they've come down from that high, and they're hovering around the 4,000 or 5,000 mark.
Does that mean they've gone back to work then? What does that tell us?
I think that's the assumption, that people have either found alternative work or they've gone back to work, or they, for other reasons, that they don't require that support anymore.
Okay. Do we have any? I think I asked. Did we have any figures for furlough?
Well, that was the information I was given when I asked the question about the furlough workers, and I was told that the Coronavirus Job Retention Scheme that was the numbers
furlough, is it?
I just gave to you. That's my understanding.
Right, fine. Thank you very much. And I see the Chancellor's going to extend it, so that will mean that Belinda and her team will be busy when coming the next few months. Good. I haven't got any urgent business. I don't know.
Chairman,
yes.
I just raised my hand. I don't know whether it's...
Sorry, I didn't see you.
No, that's all right.
I was gazing at Jim.
Well, indeed, and why not? I did raise at the meeting last month, and I think the month before, about whether there was a possibility of a representative of National Grid coming to attend our meeting, following up our questions about the provision of the solar energy from the location of the M1. I know it wasn't recorded on the minutes, but I just want to put it down that it's a shame that we haven't got somebody, and obviously we won't have time now because this is our last meeting, but it would have been nice, and I regret that, and I don't know whether you might do as well, Chair.
Yes, thank you. Well, I certainly do. And Leslie, you're
yeah, I might. No, I'm not muted. Can I just say that I have put an item on this on the report with a instruction or a recommendation for the new Scrutiny Committee to take this forward, as we couldn't get anybody to this meeting.
Through you, Chairman, I'm grateful for that information. Thank you.
Thank you. And hopefully then those of you who are going to be lucky enough to be elected to the new authority might like to, if you're put on the Scrutiny Committee, or even if you're not, move it forward, because I know there's been interest from Daventry Council about this matter, and it came up through their planning committee. And Jim, as you're going forward and not quite sure what your grand title encompasses, because it seemed an awful lot of things you're going to be doing, I presume you're going to be working 24/7 in order to carry out most of those tasks. But perhaps we can ask through your good offices that it isn't forgotten, because I think it's quite important for big sheds that are coming into West Northamptonshire for the future.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I anticipate that it will continue to be an issue, so it certainly won't be forgotten. And I've got no intention of working 24/7.
Oh, you're not. You disappoint me there. Right, thank you. Okay, Jeff, we're over to you now on the quarterly performance risk and finances report, which is here. I believe you've got some visuals to share with us. And can I just formally congratulate you on your new post in the north of the county. It's not that far away, actually, but it always sounds as though it is. And I should be interested to know where in the future HQ is actually located. East Northampton have a very nice council chamber, but I don't know whether they'll choose that one. Anyway, Jeff, if you'd like to present, please.
Well, thank you very much, Chairman, on both those parts. As for the headquarters building, that's not clear at the moment. We can debate that one, I'm sure. Yes, this is the last performance report. I've got a few slides to present to members. Are you able to share the screen with me, Diana, or shall I do that myself?
I've just made you co-host, Jeff.
Thank you very much for that. I shall prove in my usual way that I'm unable to use technology. So bear with me, please. So can you all see?
Ooh, yes, that? Yes.
Yep. Oh, can you still see it?
Yes. Good. Bigger this time.
Right. I'll just take you through the last quarterly performance report, and the object of this briefing is to highlight the exceptions and also just give you a risk update. So I've got a few slides on that. This table shows you the overall picture of the key performance indicators. I think the key thing is that the vast majority of them are green, and I think that's excellent testimony to everybody at South Northants for delivering a great service this year. And in fact, on that theme, we're taking a report to council, just highlighting those successes at the council meeting next month. So there'll be more for members at that appropriate time. Here are the highlights from, the first highlights from the protected green and clean priority. The first one is, as some of you may know, a conservation area has been proposed for the village of Slapton. There's been a consultation about that that's just closed, and the report's going to PPRS on the 17th of March for the way forward. A couple of indicators there that have got mixed RAG indicators. Protecting our natural environment. Obviously, it's something that I know several of you members have been involved in the climate change group. Mm-hmm. Also, there's lots of work going on with the Water Meadows project, and that's moving forward quite dramatically shortly as we go into the West Authority. So that progress is progressing well. Environmental sustainability, we've met stakeholders, and we're now making sure that there's a handover to the West Authority so that the work that we've done can continue into that. Next two highlights are both green, which is great news. Waste has performed very well this year. Obviously, the new lockdown has increased recycling quite considerably, and that's high at Christmas anyway. So the figures at the end of the last quarter were very good indeed. And in terms of the built heritage, obviously we're feeding into the HS2 program, heritage program rather, not the program itself. And there's work going on in development and management as well. In terms of thriving communities and well-being, temporary accommodation is in a much stronger position than it has been over recent months. We had 11 households in temporary accommodation in December. Obviously, that's subject to the very cold weather that we've had in the last couple of months, and we're working very closely with those households to find permanent solutions. Council tax, as we know all year, has been quite severely affected by COVID. The in-month performance last month was up to target. Overall, as you can see, we are slightly behind target, but catching up with each month, and Belinda's team's working hard to make sure that our customers are getting the reliefs that they're entitled to and the extra help. And obviously we're treating those cases very sensitively this year in terms of recovery. In terms of business rates, that's a lot more challenging because obviously of the current economic situation that businesses find themselves in. As we all know, there's been a number of help schemes given to businesses that have affected business rates over the last year. So collection is still down, and we're doing all we can to try and recover that as much as we can by year end. Housing applications have again been affected by COVID as well. We've had a lot more applications coming in the last quarter, and unfortunately they aren't being dealt with as fast as we would like because of the complexity of those cases, but that is improving each month. And I know we've talked to you as members about that over the last year. In terms of the thriving communities and well-being priority, disabled facilities grants have been particularly affected by COVID in the last year because that's actually stopped us making home visits in the way that we would normally have been able to. As I'm sure we'll appreciate, the kind of residents that are looking for DFGs are often very vulnerable themselves and need to isolate. So that's been challenging. There's been a short supply of materials, particularly those coming from Europe. So we have extended the grant policy until the end of the financial year to allow us as many things as we can possibly get through by the end of the year. And we've also got an occupational therapist that's working alongside the team, which is making a difference as well. Affordable homes has been challenging throughout the year. There's been 19 new homes delivered in the third quarter. Again, that was subject to the slowdown of the building trade at the beginning of the year. So we are very much catching up. In December, we were in a much better position. So we'll see where we're at in the last few weeks of the financial year. In terms of opportunity and growth priority, in terms of non-major planning applications, performance was slightly below target last month, but for the year as a whole, we're on target. You can see the figures there. So that's very encouraging. Economic growth, we're working very much to carry over our plans into the West Authority as well. That was performance. If I may just quickly touch upon risk. This is the summary of leadership risk this month. Again, very strong. We don't have any very high risks. What we did in terms of COVID following a recommendation from the audit committee last year was actually we take into account COVID measures in all of our risk commentaries. So although there's not a risk for COVID in itself, it's taken into account in all the risks. And my last slide is just a summary of the individual leadership risks, beg your pardon. And you can see that they're either all low risk or medium risk. And the one that's in blue there is the local plan, which obviously was deleted at a risk when the local plan was adopted last summer. So that's it from me, members. I wonder if you've got any questions for me, please.
Yes, thank you, Jeff. I'm sure there will be some questions. Would you like to indicate, please? Don't be shy. It's your last opportunity. Yes, Alan and then Elaine, Alan. Turn yourself on.
And Councillor Harries, please, Chairman.
I think our officers need to be congratulated, especially as regards the council tax collections. And I think we as a committee should put that on record. I'm pretty sure there's nowhere else in the county that can meet our collection rates, albeit that they're falling at the moment. And it's pretty hard to determine if someone can pay or can't pay under COVID. So, you know, I think they're doing an extremely good job. I was going to say something else. An extremely good job, and I think we need to put that on record. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. Elaine?
Yes, thank you. Yes, I think under the circumstances, with all the change that's going on from South Northants to West Northants, we've got a fantastic lot of officers that have done an awful lot, and to have these results just shows how good a run council this is, and I must congratulate all of them. Everybody, and the waste collection has been absolutely fantastic. when you see all of them out and about. And it's not just the lads that are doing the waste collection. This week, I actually saw some young ladies out there collecting the bins and dragging them across and putting them on the wagon. I think it's absolutely amazing. And congratulations to everybody. It's just a shame that we're not all going forward into the West, but I hope that the high rates do actually continue. Congratulations to everybody.
Thank you, Elaine. Anyone else want to say anything? Yes, David?
Oh, yeah, I'll just certainly echo that. I mean, it's absolutely remarkable that our risks are so low, considering the situation we're in. I don't wish to be complacent as we got 4 weeks to go yet, but outstanding work really to get to this stage. The specific question I have is about disabled facilities grants. If it's, as it seems likely, we won't spend it all by the end of March when we disappear, can I be reassured that it'll be ring-fenced as it moves forward and still will be spent in the South Northants area, in the area and on projects that we've already got lined up?
I think that's the understanding. Jeff, can you answer that? Or
Chair, I can respond to that if you like.
Yes,
yes, please. Thank you.
Like, Martin, yes.
So the approach that we've taken in West Northants is that where there's been any slippage on any capital projects, that will carry forward automatically into West Northamptonshire. So current capital projects are preserved. Any slippage on those capital projects are preserved, and they'll make up the amalgamated capital programme for West Northants.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? No. May I ask, please, that we could have something put into the Chief Executive's newsletter saying that the Scrutiny Committee would wish to thank all the staff for the heroic efforts been making over the last, well, since the lockdown began, I guess, last year. And I'm sure, Martin, you will thank Belinda and her team, because I know they've worked extremely hard and put a lot of hours in. And I think I was delighted to think we've got a female waste collector and equal opportunities and all that, getting close to International Women's Day on the 8th of March, so absolutely brilliant. So perhaps we could have a nice few words. Do you think that would be all right, Andrew?
Yes, Chairman, I think it'll be absolutely fine if I could look to Jeff just to liaise with Peter Holt and Richard on that, based on the slides that we put forward today. Obviously, we could to put some context around that as well.
Well, I think it's very important also that all our members know what a good job we've done. I know you said, Jeff, you'll be bringing the final sort of report to full council, but I think it would be nice for members to be appraised of the fact that our officers have been doing a splendid job, not just this last year, but ever since 1974, I guess. So, pound to their elbow. Thank you very much then. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, Chairman.
Oh, not doing very well here. It's all falling apart, but not to worry. I'll hold on to it. Right. We're supposed to note that, so we've noted that very well, I think. Climate Change Working Group, and I hope... See, I'm taking a leaf out of the Duchess of Cambridge book, and my hair is so shiny and glossy that it's all falling off. So I hope you're impressed that I washed it specially for you. Climate Change Working Group, I think you will have seen the supplementary briefing paper that you may have received email this afternoon or this morning. I don't know whether you've located it, but it is there for you. And Trevor, thank you. I know you've got some slides to share with us. And again, this is a good news story, I think, but we'll get to that when we get through it. Thank you, Trevor.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll try and share my screen. Hopefully that'll work. I think that's the one.
Yes.
Here we go.
Yes.
If I can just... Okay. Can you all see that?
Yes.
Great. Okay. This was touched on in the in Jeff's report on performance, but I'll obviously be able to go through it in a little bit more detail this evening, because the Scrutiny Committee had, obviously through the working group, had a very much a hands-on role in this. So just to recap, it was back in 2019 in July that full council debated a motion about climate change. And at the time, a lot of councils were declaring climate change emergencies. There was a lot of interest in this topic at that time. So the upshot of that is that council resolved to assess the carbon footprint of the district. And it's worth noting that that's the carbon footprint of South Northants, not the council. But, you know, the council is a very small part of that, but it's the whole thing. And then review what actions that the council could take to limit the effects of climate change. So that's, again, an interesting challenge. It's really saying, well, look, what can we realistically do to reduce the carbon footprint of the district that's affordable and would have some impact and have some effect. And at the same time, the council allocated £25,000 to support a scrutiny working group to work on this. So the first thing that that we did to follow up on those decisions was to work on the carbon footprint for the district, and that was presented to full council in December 2019. Shortly after that, we appointed a climate change officer, a temporary post for the remainder of the council's life, and Felicity Parker. Sorry,
shows your age.
Yeah, I know, it's terrible. Felicity Parker has done a fantastic job. Unfortunately, she couldn't be here tonight, but I think great credit goes to her for her dedication and the work she's done on this. But just to go back to the carbon footprint, I think it highlighted some quite surprising things. And I think we might have thought beforehand that South Northants would be about average, or if anything less than average for just, you know, per head of population in terms of its carbon footprint. But we're actually well above average. And of course, you know, when you look at the reason for that, the main reason is in terms of direct emissions, that is to say, emissions that arise within the geography of South Northants, it's the trunk roads that are the biggest emitter of carbon. And of course, we've got the motorways going through. And there's a calculation done on the amount of traffic on those roads and how much they emit in South Northants. So that's the main reason for that. But another significant thing that came out in our work on the carbon footprint was that actually probably the biggest impact was what's called indirect emissions. That is to say, the emissions that arise from the activities of people within South Northants, whether it's when they go on holiday, what they buy, how they travel, those sorts of things. They're probably the biggest ones. And they of course, are very, very difficult to measure, but we need to take them into account. So at the report at that time, we also identified what we thought were the priority action areas that we should look at. So we followed that up in May 2020 with a further report which presented where we thought priority actions should be based on that carbon footprint report from earlier. And they're listed there. There's own operations. So that's how we operate as a council. So it's our buildings, our fleet, you know, the activities of our staff. Waste and recycling, that's quite a big area in itself. Communications, and the importance of that one was that we could try and pick up what I just referred to as the indirect emissions. So really we needed to, although we could get our own house in order, if you like, that's a very small part of the carbon footprint for the district. So one of the things we can do is try and influence others to do things, you know, within South Northants and amend their or review their behaviour and the way that causes emissions. Tree planting, that's one that was very popular with members and very popular nationally, I think, as a way of offsetting some of the carbon emissions. Transport, of course, because that is the biggest single emitter. Housing, that's home efficiency and things like that. And of course, the planning, planning is very influential in future sustainability. So we thought we ought to look at planning policies. So what have we achieved through those priority action areas? We carried out an audit of energy efficiency in our council buildings and in the fleet. and we carried out a range of efficiency measures that were recommended by that audit report. As you can see from the written briefing that's been circulated, we weren't able to complete all of those things, and they will be, the recommendations will be passed on to West Northants to try and pick up the rest. I think the twin challenges of local government reorganisation and the pandemic have had significant impact in all of our action areas for climate change in various ways. But we did do some useful work on improving the energy efficiency, for example, in the forum and in our fleet vehicles. You've probably noticed the monthly climate change challenge communications. That was the intention of trying to get messages out to our residents and businesses about the sort of things that they could look at to reduce their carbon footprint and thereby the footprint of the district. One of the important things we did was engage with Daventry and the borough in particular, but also with the county, and try and find out what they were doing and try and encourage them. And I think it's fair to say that we were ahead of both of those two councils in our thinking and the work that we've done, and that as a result of engaging with them, we're in a similar position now and in quite a strong position heading into West Northants. We in terms of the housing, we produce some targeted information on home energy for people the sort of people that are off grid, if you like, using oil heating. We produced that information, but it hasn't been circulated yet, and that's another one that we'll be passing on to West Northants for them to look at. One of the reasons for that is that there's been quite a lot of flux and change in the government grants that are available to householders, and we wanted to see how the dust settles on that before we start giving specific information. We've agreed a partnership with the Woodlands Trust. We spent quite a lot of time working with the Woodlands Trust about tree planting. I think the thing here is that tree planting isn't something that on any sort of scale, it isn't something that you do without some detailed knowledge, really. It's something that you have to be quite understanding of what types of trees, where, maintenance, so on and so forth. So it isn't something you can do without expertise. So we partnered with the Woodlands Trust, and with them we've agreed a scheme whereby large-scale planting can be subsidised. And 6 landowners in the district have come forward and expressed an interest in that. It's obviously too late to plant it in this season, but next autumn we hope that those landowners will go on and plant large-scale planting with the subsidised scheme. We've also ordered through another government scheme 16 new electric vehicle charging points for 2 car parks in Towcester. And I think I mentioned this, we've had positive engagement with our neighbouring councils. And through that, I think we've had some significant influence over the planning and design of future Northants. So that's to say the West Northants Council is prioritising this kind of work. So in summary, in a relatively short period of time, I think we've had a good impact. We've mapped our carbon footprint, we've progressed some of the short-term priority actions, and we've set longer-term targets which are linked to the government goal of being carbon neutral. I think it's 2050, if I remember rightly. Engaged with our neighbours, and we've influenced West Northants Council so that this good work can be carried on. Thank you, Chairman. That's the end of my presentation.
Thank you, Trevor. Thank you very much. I'm sure there'll be a few questions. I would like you, please, to thank Felicity, because I know she's done a lot of work on this. And
I will do, yes.
Yes, and the other thing I was going to say was, as some of you know, I did sit on the Task and Finish group for the new unitary on particularly climate change. And I think it's fair to say, and I echo what Trevor said, that we are ahead of the other councils, which is very gratifying, I think, for a small council. We certainly punch above our weight. Now, they are determined, I think, for the new council to declare a climate emergency. So I should be interested how that pans out, but they're very keen on that. I think also they've got a nice young enthusiastic climate change officer, if that's his correct title, at Daventry, Lee. Can't remember his surname, but he seemed frightfully enthusiastic, which is really good, I think, and I'm sure he will engage very well with the councillors. And you know, it's nice to see enthusiasm, I think, because it does encourage other people to get themselves involved. Just about the task and finish thing, I was a bit concerned when they were talking about engaging with youth, which we do spend a lot of time talking about engaging with youth, and their youth seem to be totally reside in schools, which seemed to me a bit strange, really, because I think you can engage with certainly primary school children, but when they're older, they may leave school at 16 and go to colleges, or they may go into apprenticeships, or they may go to work. And I think we've got another opportunity to engage with young people. And I think that's very important. And whatever groups they're involved with, I think, you know, it's our duty to engage with all our younger residents and try and get them enthused about things. So if I can, thank you, Trevor, very much. But I'm sure there's some questions from my colleagues. Don't be shy. Yes, Richard, and then Alan.
Well, I've Councillor Walker on the screen first, so I'll let him go first.
So, Alan?
Yeah. I mean, you've only got to look at your screen. There's yellow hands going up all over the place, Chairman.
Yes.
Don't look for someone to wave their hands. I mean, there is a way of doing this. And
okay, Alan, just tell us what you want to say then. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much for shutting me up. Anyhow, bottom line is that a couple of months ago at this meeting, at the scrutiny meeting here, we was talking about climate change and planting trees, and I'm glad to see 6 landowners are prepared to do it. I'm still going to ask the same question. Why are the trees in Whittle Wood being felled at the present time? Somewhere in the region about 200 or 300 trees have come down, and I have no idea why they're doing that. Nobody can tell me that. If you go up cow pastures up to Whittlebury, half of the trees down that road there have been felled. So, you know, it's no good trying to put them up if we're felling them. Can someone give me an answer, or at least give me a written answer, if nothing else?
Is it not to do with the road, Alan?
No.
Oh, right. Abigail, have you got any idea? No, she hasn't got any idea. Okay, well, we'll follow that up, Alan, and somebody can make some inquiries, please. I don't know who that would form to. Trevor, would you be able to find out?
I'll try and find out, Chairman. I can't answer that on the spot here now.
Well, if you could, and we got an answer, then perhaps we could all see it, and that would be helpful. And other people may be able to follow it up in our absence then, Alan. Who knows? Right, Richard, I think you were next.
Yeah, thank you very much indeed. Well, first of all, well done to all the people who've been involved with this and the information that's been gathered and the action that's been taken. And I'm glad to hear that West North Hants Council will be appraised of all this and will follow it on, and the young fellow from Daventry could be key in all this. But the question I have is, we discussed air quality recently along the A5 in Towcester. There's a report that we discussed, and that will be sent on to Public Health England to gather some more support for trying to detrunk the A5. I think the climate change report that we have here would be useful if that could be sent on to Public Health England. The more outside bodies that are aware of the quality of air, or lack of air quality, shall we say, and as the climate change report indicates, the emissions that we suffer in this district, the better. So perhaps that report could be, our report from climate change could be passed on.
Yes, that's certainly a thought. Anybody want to make any comments about that? Anybody waving to me that I can't see? That's an Irish question. Yes, Elaine, you put your hand up.
Yes, I did have a question. I did put my hand up, yes. Yes, I totally agree with Richard. I think that does need to go with the other one too, and be followed up with it as backup for it. The other thing I was going to say was about the car parking meters. Are we going to have any of them in Brackley? This is the electric charging points, because I understand that there were some going to be to come there, and we haven't heard anything further from them. Do we know what's happening with that? Because I think this was all part of this climate change effort as well.
Trevor?
Yeah, through you, Chairman. We did make applications for a couple of sites in Brackley. They have to go through a process where they're assessed for feasibility, so cost and whether they meet the objectives of the scheme. And the scheme is to provide facility for people who basically don't have the opportunity through having their own driveway and their own connection. So we applied for two. We applied for the leisure centre, but also I think a car park in Brackley. And unfortunately, in one case the cost was prohibitive, and in the other case it didn't meet the objective that it was. It wasn't targeting the right kind of housing. But that was not our assessment. That's the assessment that the Energy Savings Trust make, who are the gatekeepers for the fund. The fund is open again next year, so there will be a chance to have another go next year and apply for either apply again for those sites or for other sites.
No, I thought there was supposed to be some down the high street in the Market Square or just off the Market Square. We did have, I'm a Brackley Town Council member as well, and we did have some people asking us about these charging points, and it seems to have just gone quiet. That's why I was asking.
Yeah, through you, Chair. We made an application for the Market Square in Brackley, and it was turned down because it was the cost was prohibitive.
Is it open, Trevor, for Brackley Town Council to put their own application in next year, or whenever it's opened again?
Yes, it is. In fact, we wrote to parishes and town councils telling them about the scheme and encouraging them to apply. But unfortunately, we didn't get any. We're not aware of any of that actually happening. But it is open. It would be open to town council. Yeah. Yeah.
Perhaps it might be an idea for the parish council forum then, perhaps to be reminded again, possibly, perhaps after the elections in May, because you might have some enthusiastic climate changers been elected to parish councils, and they might embrace it. Would that be an idea, do you think?
Excuse me, Chair, there is an update this month on the parish forum newsletter that's just gone out.
Okay.
It did provide quite a few details for parish councillors to apply for the grant.
Yes, thank you, Abigail. Well, perhaps, I mean, no doubt most parishes and town council, we have, parish assemblies, I don't know whether every parish council has them, but certainly in my ward, we have parish assemblies. And when the district council and the county council have to give reports, as well as other organisations. So it may be an opportunity for those who are still around to actually remind, if we get extra people there, as we do, members of the public attending. So another opportunity really to preach. Less than converted. Yes.
What I will do is mention it at the next town council meeting, which is in a couple of weeks. So I will bring that subject up and ask them to go ahead with it in the next quarter, or whenever it comes up again.
Thank you, Elaine. Richard?
Yeah, I was just going to say, following on what Abigail's saying, that Toaster Town Council is looking into, has got a climate action group already formed, so it is very much aware of how important this issue is and taking it forward on a local basis.
Good, thank you. Any questions about any other aspect on the report?
No, we have.
Yes, Val.
We have actually Middleton Cheney and my role as clerk there as well. We have actually applied, and for the reasons that's been explained, not met the criteria that they have. And the reasons I put forward is because I have a number of senior consultants at the hospitals who moved to Middleton and have got electric cars and want to be able to, and they haven't got the driveways because they're going into the old properties. And I included highways in that, and I would say we haven't got any further forward on it, but we are doing it. And the meeting you referred to, the annual parish meeting, that will be going out shortly, and it is on the agenda item.
Good. Thank you very much then. Thank you. Good. Could I ask, please, Leslie or Diana, that we actually attach the report that we got this morning or this afternoon to go with the minutes, please, because I don't want us, you know, it all to disappear, and hopefully it will be picked up by those going forward, because I think, you know, we have done some good work, and I do thank you all for that, officers and members, and I don't want it to be lost in the new authority, really. So are you agreeable for that to go forward? And is that all right, Leslie? Because she
we could attach it to the scrutiny annual report. I can include it with that if you like.
Yes, please.
Yep.
Yes, good. Excellent. Don't want it lost. So thank you all once again. Now we move on to item 8 then, the Building Stronger Community Strategy. Peter, and I think you've got some slides for us. Joe, yes. Do you want to introduce it? Or you're happy for Peter to go ahead?
Happy for Pete to go ahead.
Right, good. You're on your own then, Peter.
No, I'm not on my own. We've had a pre-match chat.
Have you? Okay, it's all coming out now then. Excellent.
Thank you, Chair. Right, I'll just share my screen so I can bring the slides up.
Yep.
Okay, let's turn this into a slideshow. There we go. Is that okay?
Yes, fine.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, so I've got a number of slides just to take you through our very new Building Stronger Communities strategy. So I'll take you through the purpose of our strategy and the process that we took into designing and writing this strategy, and then give you an update on where we are now with the strategy. Okay, so we set a purpose out at the very beginning to give us direction, so that the team writing the strategy remained focused on what we wanted to achieve. So really, the purpose is written there, so it's around creating safe, connected, supported and empowered communities. We set a number of objectives as well for our strategy, and these are very much set with an eye on us becoming the West Northants Authority, with considering with the work that we put together, the ability to scale up the projects across the new geographical footprint of the West Authority, and supporting our communities to recover from the impacts of COVID-19. So, as has become the way in South Northants Council, when we write our strategies, we started by producing an evidence base. And this was to capture the needs of our communities, the strengths, and help us to understand what is already being delivered and where the gaps were. We then decided that we would take a different approach with writing this strategy. This wasn't going to be officer-led. This was going to be very much done in co-production. So we decided to involve key stakeholders and organisations that would be connected to the work that the strategy would cover. So that top bit there, oh, that's just me, isn't it? It's got screen sharing. So this diagram here just explains our method and the approach that we took when we were right at the very beginning of the strategy. So we started looking just across the Healthy Communities team to find out the data that we already knew and the intel that we had. From there, we progressed to all South Northants Council services, and then we took that out wider to partners. So there's partners that we were already working with, and then partners that we were aware of, but perhaps didn't have those relationships in place at the time. So part of the process was always considering the internal and external strategies. Be these SNC strategies, or whether they were more national, regional and national strategies as well, and how they influenced the direction of the strategy that we were writing here for our local communities. We reflected very much on the evidence base to ensure that our strategy addressed the needs of our community. So very much a needs driven, right from the very beginning this strategy was. And we're always challenging ourselves and asking why were we adding this as a focus into our strategy, and then looking at the justification through the evidence base. So we've got the next two slides cover the timeline. So We had a pre-coronavirus timeline, and then the strategy went on hold as we went into March 2020. This is due to the majority of the Healthy Communities team who are leading the production of this strategy, moving across to help the emergency response to COVID-19. So the first pre-coronavirus part of the strategy build was initially, we were briefed in October 2019, and given the purpose of the strategy, we delivered a number of workshops in January and February, and these were to our parishes and to our wider stakeholder group to give them the first look at of our thinking and the evidence base that we were developing, and to take on board all of their contributions. We continued then with that co-production with our key stakeholders, and we held a second wave of workshops through March, and these focused very much on getting down into more detail. So for example, we held some smaller workshops to discuss community transport and volunteering, and we had some members workshops as well. We took then this strategy work, as I say, had to be put on hold in 2020, in March 2020 because of COVID-19. But we had a base for our strategy, and we had moved it along quite far. So this second strategy timeline, this is how we then picked this strategy back up in July. Just it was at the point where, as a healthy community service, we were getting to grips with the pandemic and the response that we were providing to our residents. So we had the capacity amongst our staff then to be able to pick this strategy up again. What this gave us, what we did at the very beginning was we took this as an opportunity to review the strategy in the position we've got it to ensure that it was still relevant and to ensure that it still delivered to our community's needs. And the key part here being, will it now address the impacts that COVID has had on our residents? We did some more internal and external reviews with our key stakeholders. So we did quite a long period of consultation. This was done face-to-face, well, via Zoom calls, should I say, virtual calls, and it was done via online surveys as well to capture their thoughts and pull that all together. And then we moved the strategy through the processes, and pleased to say the strategy was fully adopted by our cabinet in December. So this slide here, this maps out the body of the strategy, really. This is the themes and the priorities. So on the left-hand side in the dark blue, we've got 4 themes. We've got people, engagement, resilience, and place. And on the right-hand side of this slide in the light grey, that's our priorities. So they're the priorities linked into those themes. So as I say, key consideration early on was to make sure that this strategy did then was scalable, as we moved across into West Northants Council, and also then helped that recovery through COVID-19. So some of the expected work streams that we'll be looking at from day one as we become West Northants Council, I've just highlighted there in bold on this slide. So this is around supporting our local community and voluntary organisations to build on the interest in volunteering and grow local volunteering workforce. We've seen a huge number of people put their hands up and volunteer during the pandemic, and we want to be able to capture that interest and roll that forward as we move on. Working with local organisations to create a coordinated and joined up service that addresses the inequalities in access to food and other essential resources is another key piece of work we've been discussing with colleagues across the new West Authority in Daventry and in Northampton, and through the work that we've been doing with our Community Resilience Hub, as well as highlighted that this is a need and a key piece of work that needs to continue. And then the creating better connected communities, being a very rural district, and as we move across to the west as well, we take on the rural areas of Daventry district. So keeping that connection and making sure that people aren't isolated and lonely within our communities. So a key piece of work will be to set up a community transport forum, and this will look at all the different aspects of community transport, buses that we've got, our minibus services, and our car driver services as well. And the other aspect of that will be to change what is generally a perception that these services are for older people, and so that we can work with our younger people to make sure that they also benefit from these opportunities to keep connected and use local transport. My final slide, this is just a bit of a window into my brain and the thinking about, this is the process that we take whenever we look at new projects and how we put these through the delivery plan. So we're always mapping who's doing what and understanding those barriers and the opportunities and the potential there to work in partnership, filtering all that through and dropping that into the groups, into the themes and the priorities of our strategy, understanding where the evidence is and the best way the project should be delivered. And then considering the final part there in the gold is considering the role of us as a local authority, reducing duplication, adding value to existing project work, and where necessary, creating new projects. So ensuring that we don't just reinvent the wheel because we want to, making sure we add value where we should be. That's all my slides, Chairman. So
thank you, Peter. I'm sure we'll have some comments. I would like, first of all, to kick off by asking you, how are you going to empower people? Because that, to me, is the underlying key to it all, giving people the confidence that they can challenge, ask and participate. So how do we go about empowering, which probably leads me into my second question. Just hold that thought a moment. I don't know what the new setup's going to be in the new authority. So are we going to have a community development department who is going to help and lead on this? Because one person or two people can't do this. If you answer those, then I've got another one or two to go on with. So how are we going to empower people?
Okay.
Because that means face-to-face, in my book, face-to-face discussions with real people, not through stakeholders, because people don't know they're a stakeholder. They're people, they're residents, they live here. So how are we going to engage with those and empower them? Who's going to do it?
Okay, if I take part of that question and then I'll hand over to Joe to answer the second part of that question.
On then.
It will give you a full answer. So the first part, I mean, I think through the co-production of this strategy, we don't solely own this strategy. So we own this strategy with the organisations that we work with and that have engaged with the strategy and helped us to write. So that's community voluntary organisations across the district.
Yeah, but they're not in touch with most people. I'm interested in the people who aren't empowered, who don't become a volunteer willy-nilly, don't go to age drop-ins or whatever. How do we engage with real people who are living in the community, whatever their age?
That's our starting point, is the organisations that have got the skills and the people on the ground that can go out and reach those people. And then we need to work with our comms departments to reach people, and we need to get messaging out there. So we have community development officers within our team. And as soon as they're able to, they'll be on the ground. They've been very disappointed that they haven't been able to get their boots on the ground for the past sort of 10, 11 months. So they will be out and about and they'll be working. And we work closely with across all the different departments as well within South Northants Council. So with our community safety teams, with our housing teams, so we can reach those. I know you don't like the word, but we can reach those unengaged people as well, and that's how we'll go about that.
I'm sorry, I'm doing a big sigh here. I'll give you a scenario, so perhaps you can help me. We will have 3,000 houses being built in Toaster South Extension, which will give us a population of approaching, what, 9,500, 12,000 occupants probably, all ages, although we know from the health service nobody young is going to move there, but we'll ignore that. Now, and I don't like to draw my own experience, but I organised things that people went round and visited everybody who moved in. And I'm talking big areas in Milton Keynes now. So we had a profile, we knew who they were, and we involved church groups or whoever it was to help in this and knock on the door and say, here we are, can we help you? Give them some information. And these are the people I'm talking about. You know, you can't leave it to an established organisation to engage with them all. They can't. And particularly in the rural areas, we ignore people moving into South Northants, if I may say so. We just assume they're going to get assimilated into something which doesn't exist. because the actual numbers of people who actually participate are very, very small. And yes, we've had an uptake with people who've seen they want to do something because of the pandemic, probably because they were sitting at home and they hadn't been sitting at home before, so they had the time and the enthusiasm to do it. But can you see what my difficulty with all this? Because it's not just the established voluntary organisations. It is real people who aren't engaged with anybody that we need to try and get to. Because I don't want to read in the paper some elderly lady dies and what we hear is nobody visited her in the last 4 weeks or whatever it is, because that happens because nobody has cared enough. And we, you know, and the mantra is find a busy woman and dump it on her, basically, if you want something done. Mm-hmm. And so I just feel quite passionate about it, and I don't know how we're going to go about it. Now, I think, Joe, you wanted to respond to me and tell me I'm barking up the wrong tree.
Just thinking on things that we can use that partners have got, but also ourselves. So SMVB have got their rural information bus that we've that we can use to go out and about to the more rural parts of the community. I know Yasmin, our community development officer, is absolutely key. She's very frustrated that she can't go out and about at the moment because of COVID, because she wants to do that direct engagement. Another example is good neighbour schemes, where we've seen some new schemes come on board this year, and we've got a lot of appetite from rural communities to set up new good neighbour schemes, I think prompted by COVID, as you've recognised, and that is on the ground, people doing the things that you've said, new development, knock on doors. Do people need help? Do they want to connect with their neighbours, people in their street? So I think we are seeing some of this on the ground action, and I think it's our role.
But we need to be able to sustain it, because this is a flash in the pan, so to speak. So all those people who volunteered, are we going to sustain them to want to be doing things, keeping an eye on their neighbour? Because we are very good in this country at responding to things in an emergency. Now, I know this emergency has gone on far longer than people anticipated, so people are quite happy to respond for a limited amount of time, but keep that going year on year, it gets more difficult. So I don't know, haven't got the answer, but I'm quite intrigued about that. Richard, you looked as though you were about to say something.
Well, yeah, I put my hand up, so yes, I would like to join in. I share what you're saying about all this and the people who, you know, how we approach it. It's the size of the team at West Northants Council within this department seems to me to be the key, which you've already mentioned, Chairman. If there are just one or two people, they've got a hell of a job on their hands. Unless I'm getting it wrong what the job is about. I mean, potentially it all sounds very abstract. Or is it that you are the kind of coordinating role? So all these local organisations, voluntary groups that are each doing their bit wherever, they look to you to try and G things up a bit, get more into the community, get more volunteers, try to reach people they haven't managed to reach. Is it a coordinating role, or is it an advisory role? I'm unclear about it, frankly, and I'd like, you know, in terms of specifics, you refer to community transport. Yeah, that's certainly a transport forum. That is key, because most people, a lot of people live in villages where there aren't buses more than every other Thursday or something. And but other than that, it's all terribly wishy-washy, unless you've got a lot of people who can really take the lead on this and drive it forward. And volunteer groups can look to that individual or people and say, yeah, well, what can you do for us? Can you sort of get it more specific rather than all this in-house language of stakeholders, and let's never use that word, what it's all about?
Peter or Joe or both? Yes, in a minute, Charles. Yes.
I think Joe's better to answer the question around West Northants and how it will look when we move forward into West Northants. As far as South Northants Council goes, well, I think, you know, we refer to stakeholders or voluntary organisations that we work with. They're our partners, and we can't do this alone. And that's why we did write the strategy with co-production, so that we got people's buy-in from the beginning, and we didn't just go out and create this strategy on our own. The Good Neighbour scheme that Joe's mentioned is something that we've grown that now. We've got 13 Good Neighbour schemes across South Northants. There's a further 4 hopefully coming on board before the end of this month, and they're supported to continue and to sustain, you know, when people do start to return to work. So we've made that engagement. We've touched base with these groups now, and so we can support them and keep encouraging them to add new volunteer members to their groups. Good. And to keep going. So that's one example of that kind of that on the ground, people knocking on doors, as Joe said, talking to people.
Okay, and in response to what does the resources across West Northants look like? So this area of activity, community development, sits within the my team moving forward. We've got there is a small team at Daventry. We've got our own small team at South Northants, and there's a bigger team at Northampton Borough who work on community safety and community engagement. So those teams are already starting to talk together and are very keen to learn about what each other's doing and how they can link up and share good practice, because they've been doing that on the preparatory work for vesting day. So it isn't just one or two officers, there is a bigger resource than that across West Northampton.
Yes, Charles wants to ask a question in a minute, but just let me follow that up. I presume, I may be presuming wrongly, that you will be organising the department, whatever it is, to work in particular areas who will know that area. So we will have a team for South Northampton, one for Daventry and one for the borough, because as you know, Joe, the issues in the borough are completely different from our rural hinterland. Big problems. So is that how you envisage it happening? Because I can't see how you can do it otherwise. You need people who actually know the area, know the people, and can particularly reach out to real people, talk to them. No, not through stakeholders, but real people.
So from day one, nothing's changing. The teams will stay working where they're working, and working on the things that they're working on now, but starting to link with their new colleagues. Obviously in time services may be reshaped, but West Northants, and I think this might relate to another question you may have, Chair, around is this being taken forward? So we have shared the strategy with the leadership team at West Northants Council, and it was well received and acknowledged as a good piece of work. We've also shared it with the teams at Daventry and Northampton Borough. And there's an appetite to expand it and produce something similar for West Northamptonshire, but there is recognition that we need to reflect localities and place and reflect the uniqueness of localities and place, and balance. So there's a balance to be achieved. That West will exist as a place that's connected, but South Northants will have its own challenges and opportunities, as will Daventry and Northampton. We've got to recognise that and have responses to those issues in those areas, but think about how you can connect things up as well. So that's how we think we'll be taking this piece of work forward.
That's great. The theory is brilliant. How are you going to connect with my 92-year-old who lives, down the lane?
I think we're going back.
Who's physically, he's got her marbles. So, I mean, these are my issues. We can have all the strategies we like, but if we leave people out, it won't work. And how are they going to know about it?
Sandra?
Yes?
Can I interrupt? I think we need to also work locally with the parish councils and town councils. We have in Middleton, for example, 2 neighbourhood schemes, and we're working closely with ACRE on that.
Good.
I've equally raised I've done some grant funding, because we actually said coming out of COVID, some of these issues are going to continue, which is probably what you've been doing, Joe, at where you are, and to take matters forward. As you say, we've got 80s and 90s and 100-year-old people within the village, and although you do need to know these people, and they need to feel comfortable. The very elderly people, a stranger knocking on the door or communicating with them, they don't necessarily feel comfortable about that, and they want to deal with people locally that they know, as you say, which is what we're trying to do now.
Thank you, Charles.
Thank you, Chair. Peter, Joe, thank you for your input. My only comment is I did feel like, I think Richard Dallin said, that your presentation was full of management speak. And I do think we need to cut through on some of these issues. I would urge you to really focus on the third sector and the established organisations, as the example being in Middleton Chin that Val just went through. Trying to do things on your own, you're going to be firing very loosely and not have any real impact. You need to be a facilitator, and you need to be an agent provocateur. As Richard was saying, you simply, I don't know if I heard it rightly about a bus or something wandering around the countryside. I mean, that is, if that's the case, that is, in my view, a total waste of time. I may have misheard, but use the third sector, use the established bodies.
The bus is called Ability, and they, again, in order to be able to use it, they have to fill in a number of forms and identify how they want to use that particular bus route. And SNC did give them grant funding. We're going back a couple of years now for ability to do that. But again, people to keep filling in forms on their personal details. Again, some of the, no matter what age it is, they feel a little bit uncomfortable about that.
Thank you, Val. Any further questions? We've had yes, Elaine.
Yes, I have had my hand up for a little while.
Sorry, Elaine.
No worries, no worries. Yes, we're in Brackley. We've got Brackley Elves, which started out with this COVID thing. We had them at we had a agenda item at Brackley Town Council the other day, where they have set up and finally made into a proper group with their constitution and everything else, and have got the backing of Brackley Town Council for their group. This is exactly what they do. They go around doing lunches for elderly people in the town once on a weekend sort of thing. They go around doing bits of shopping, bits of gardening, bits of all sorts of things. And I really think, I've got a feeling that they may already be in touch with Yasmin on this. I'm sure they are. And it is working extremely well. And they've got a lot of credibility in the town, and they've got little posters up all around the town advertising it on posts and everything, telling you what you're doing. And they're organising all sorts of events as well this year, which is really good news, and reaching out to the elderly and the young. And I did notice earlier today that the leisure centre, the South Northants leisure side, is also doing something over the Easter holidays and trying to get activities together. So I think the reaching out is beginning to happen. I think COVID has had a lot of pushing this to the back, but I do admire Peter and Joe for really bringing this forward and putting it forward in front of us now.
Good, thank you, Elaine. And I think it's great that grassroots action is really reaching out to their communities, because that's where it's important. And if it's self-propelled with some help from other people, like whoever, from SNC, even better. Yes, Ken, you waved to me.
Following up what Val and also Charles and Elaine have said, is obviously lots of things actually are going to be supported by the local community. What is the situation with regards to grant funding in the new organisation? Will there still be that availability to support these small organisations to actually participate in this strategy?
Joe?
Yeah, I'll do a double act with Martin on this one.
Right.
So we have mapped what community funding is built into the three district and borough councils' base budgets. And we mapped that early on in the Future Northants work and double checked it with Martin and his team. So there is, it's what's built into our base budgets. That will be different to how we've administered new homes bonus historically at SNC, but we do have some built into our base budget, and we've mapped that. And it isn't insignificant, is it, Martin? It will give us the opportunity to do some really good work on the ground through grant giving.
And I think, Chair, just to add to that, I think in terms of the general principle that's been applied in terms of setting the budget for West Northampton next year, if there was a base budget in the sovereign authorities, those base budgets transferred across. So that's what Joe's referring to there. If there was expenditure which was funded through one-off funds, that won't directly transfer across. But if any of those one-off funds are remaining at the end of this financial year, that pot of money will transfer into West Northamptonshire, and it's to be determined how that will be used going forward. But if the base budget funding was there, that would be in West Northamptonshire.
Yes,
who will be responsible for allocating this to particular projects? Because obviously at the moment, because it's local, councillors have the opportunity through the grant funding panel to actually allocate these sort of funds to worthwhile projects.
Yes, I think, if I may say so, Ken, there's been debate as to whether there will be area council, so to speak, which may or may not distribute funds or voluntary groups, or whether they do it centrally. And we had a big discussion about this when we were doing the draft to constitution for the shadow council, and there wasn't any agreement as such. So I think it will be one thing, well, you probably know more than I do, Martin, that will be debated fairly soon on as to how the distribution of grant aid to various organisations will take place.
I can add, I mean, the community development officers across West Northants have shared their current community funding policies. Obviously, they will cease on the 31st of March, but there is an appetite to do a piece of work, and that would involve members in terms of what does that regime and framework look like going forward. So that would be an early piece of work, so that in the first few months of the new authority, there would be an adopted framework that would guide how we can make those decisions and who would be involved in that. So it's a piece of work that will be very early on in the new authority.
Thank you, Joe. Martin, what's the budget then on the accrued figures that we already know about from each authority? What's it in the order of?
In terms of all of the one-off funds that are remaining in the different authorities? Well, that's a very good question.
Sorry about that then.
If you look at the level of earmarked reserves that are left in the sovereign authorities, we expect to inherit about £55 million worth of those earmarked reserves. Now, they will be earmarked for specific purposes, and there will be lots of them. So if we look at new homes bonus, and if we apply this back to South Northants, there will be a relatively small amount of new homes bonus one-off funding left. That will be held in a earmarked reserve currently for South Northants. That will transfer across into West Northamptonshire, and then it will be for West Northamptonshire to determine how that's allocated going forward. But it will be clear where that money has come from and the purpose that it was used for previously. And I'm sure that'll be part of the consideration in terms of how that's used going forward. But in overall terms, the total amount of earmarked reserves held and going forward into West Northamptonshire come to £55 million. The new homes bonus elements now will be very, very small in comparison, probably 150, 200,000, something like that.
Thank you very much. And presumably there'll be a common application form coming out sort of, well, about 12th of May, I should think, isn't it?
Yeah, we won't have a consistent approach for how we use those.
Disappoint me.
It will depend on the earmarked reserve that's been set up and the purpose of it. And so it'll vary from reserve to reserve, actually.
Thank you very much. Well, unless anybody wants to ask anything else, can we thank Peter and Joe for their input? We wish you well on it. As I indicated before, I want you to enthuse your councillors going forward to buy into it, and so they know all about it, and I think that would be good. Thank you. So we move down to sort of a more practical thing now, which is the Toaster Youth Coffee House. And I think, Peter, you're going to lead us through this.
I am, yes. Thank you, Chairman. It's me again. Okay, so I'm just going to pick out some of the key parts of the report that was sent around with the agenda. So just to start with, the purpose of the report was to provide the update on how the community grant funding awarded to Toaster Youth Coffee House has been delivered. And this has been through the refurbishment and the extension works to the building. As we move through the report into the introduction, points 2.2 and 2.3, the two grants that were awarded, one in April 2016 was awarded for £200,000, and in October 2018 there was a grant awarded for £63,958.79. Both of these grants were to do the refurbishment and extension works of the building. So a little bit.
Any pictures anywhere?
I haven't got any pictures on me at the moment.
No, no, not on you. But I mean, do we have any? So, you know, before and after.
We will have. Yep, we will have. And
before we all depart,
yeah.
Perhaps you could email them to us.
Yeah, and I can say I took the Healthy Communities team back in December 2019. We were still a fairly new formed team then, and we went and used the Toaster Youth Coffee House for a team working session back in the days when you could get around a table face to face. Fantastic facility. We use the mezzanine floor for presentations using the facilities they've got there. And then we use the lower floor, which has got breakout area, comfortable sofa seating and a small kitchenette. So it does look like a really good facility.
Good.
So how was the grant funding spent? Grant 1 is covered by 3.2 in the report. So this grant, which was awarded in April 2016, they had a number of issues that they had to work through first before the building works could start. Building works did start in May 2017. They faced significant delays due to an internal wall falling down in the building, but the works was finished by November 2017. Between November 2017 and August 2018, the Toaster Youth Coffee House attempted to complete any final works, sort of painting, etc., by calling on their volunteer base and also trying to find some alternative funding. But they struggled to pull in lots of alternative funding because of the demographic of the area. So grant 2, which is covered in point 3.4.
Sorry, can you just say, are we too old in Toaster or too young?
I don't think we had areas in high enough deprivation in Toaster in the area they were covering. Okay. I think a lot of it was linked to that. So grant 2 covered by point 3.4. In August 2018, Toaster Youth Coffee House decided that they would apply for a second time to South Northants Council for some grant funding. The grant was awarded in October 2018. They had a matter of land registration, which held up that had to be worked through and cleared up before they could continue to do any of the works. And it took until February 2019 for that land registration to come through and be cleared. The final element of work that they did at the Toaster Youth Coffee House was completed in November 2019, and that was to install the disabled lift. Okay, so part of the report then, as we move through, it covers what's been delivered. So as I say, so Toaster Youth Coffee House, they delivered the building refurbishment and the extension, and that's what the grants 1 and grant 2 were awarded for. In point 3.5 of the report, it covers that what they've achieved, and they've achieved they've increased the capacity of the building by 75%, and it can now accommodate up to 80 young people at one given time, which is a fantastic resource that we've got now locally in Toaster. The disabled lift that's been installed now enables full accessibility to the building on both levels. The building was officially ready to be opened in March 2020, and obviously COVID-19 came along and put a stop to that launch. So they have done some activity during COVID-19. Lots of the activity has been around scoping the opportunities to keep in touch with young people of Toaster through virtual programs. But obviously they have had lots of barriers. They haven't really been able to deliver anything face to face or bring young people into their building. They have been building lots of relationships with local organisations, South Northants Youth Engagement and South Northants Volunteer Bureau being those, a couple of examples. And points 3.13 and 3.14 just give some examples of how they're looking to expand the wider community work and bring in some commercial use, if you like, through hire agreements of the building and some of the groups that they're reaching out to. So future plans, again, very much governed by the government roadmap around lifting restrictions and what they can and they can't do as and when. We've all seen the roadmap now. And those dates given, as we know, are at the earliest point that we could get some face-to-face contacts. So what they are planning to do is provide some virtual physical activity sessions as a way of bringing young people together and giving them a taster of a session and getting them on board. And as soon as they are able to, they will then take that session outside and they'll use the recreation ground in Towcester. That's BPM 123, I think they call that. They're also going to be working with South Northants Youth Engagement, who have recently employed a new youth worker. And this is a way that they will start to connect with young people through this youth worker and the skills that this youth worker will bring to our local area. And some of the work that youth worker will be doing will be talking to young people and getting their input into the services that they want, what's really key for them, and getting the young people to help the design of those services as well. The Towcester Youth Coffee House will be looking to expand on the work that they've been doing with Daventry Breastfeeding Group. So when they have been able to, over the last 12 months, Daventry Breastfeeding Group have been hiring the facility and running some sessions there. They're looking to expand that now and run a local young mums group to provide key support services and that social interaction as well. Point 3.20 in the report touches on the progress around launching a virtual youth club. So they've got young people leading on this and they are looking to run a virtual youth club to provide that social connection until COVID restrictions allow face-to-face to return into the facility. And then finally, point 3.23 in the report. I've had conversations with Towcester Youth Coffee House, and they've agreed that Healthy Communities team can have representation at their trustee meetings. So this will give us an opportunity to keep that communication going, to advise and to guide, and to hear about their developments as well, and just keep in touch really and keep connected with what's going on at Towcester Youth Coffee House. That's a quick summary of the report there, Chairman.
Well, thank you, Peter, and I think we're all pleased that the money that was allocated has been spent on the things that it should have done. But I guess the next bit is actually providing activities that young people actually want. So are they going to sort of reach out, I don't know how you're going to do it, and connect with a lot of young people and then ask what sort of facilities they would like to see, or are they going to set up a program of activities hoping that some of the things they think they'd like to do will actually resonate with young people? How are they going to go about it?
They're going to very much do it so that it's young people led. So they'll be reaching and having those conversations with young people, using the virtual youth club to capture the interest of young people and to get their ideas around designing what sort of services they want. We know that Costa Coffee on the High Street in Towcester has lots of young people congregate.
Yes, indeed.
Yep. So the Towcester Youth Coffee House, part of the design of the refurb of the building was to create that social area, and they've got some fantastic sort of seating areas there with a small kitchenette as well, which allows the young people to come in and make that their own Costa Coffee shop. So that's the sort of thing that they've done, and they've done that because they know that is a need in the area, and that's what people want now. So yeah, very much. I'm working through South Northants Youth Worker as well to understand what people want. So it's going to be user-led, a user-led service.
That's good. And dare I ask about the trustees? How many? What's their age profile, or are they all too old to know what young people might like?
No, they've got a mix. Yeah, they do have a mix. They have a young person who I was told was in their 20s, but that's young for me, so I'm going with young. Yeah, so they do have a young person representing on their board of trustees, and that person is currently completing a qualification in youth work as well. So they're learning on the ground as well whilst they're completing that qualification. Also, the sort of the level of experience that they've got amongst their trustees. They've got their chair has got a number of years managing charity. They've got social worker as well as part of their trustees. They've got local businesses. They've got people that have got experience of community development and engagement work with local housing organisations.
Have they been interacting with young people? Because it's all very well being, whatever you say, but if they haven't actually worked with young people before, their perception of what might be needed and how you interact with young people is usually quite different.
Yes.
So is there professional expertise with young people? Like the charity, was it young people?
Yep, it was. And as I said, that the young person that is going through their youth work qualification as well represents the young people.
Yeah, you've got one, that's great. What I'm talking about is the other trustees, their expertise in actually young people, because that's what it's supposed to be for, young people. It isn't, I mean, I'd be hopeless being a trustee because I'm far too old, and my interaction with young people is, you know, negligible these days. So I mean, it's really important that the trustees, yes, they've got to have expertise and professional skills, but actually understanding what it is that the coffee house is going to actually deliver.
Yeah,
and getting it right, which is very tricky.
It is, yeah. I mean, I'll respond to that. I mean, it takes away a little bit from the report, but some of the work that the South Northampton youth engagement worker will be doing will be working with local schools to create youth councils, and the idea
what
will be
that person's
they feed
actually
in.
going to be called?
Well, I don't know the actual job
Well,
title.
I mean, come on, if you're going into a school and announce, hello, I'm a youth engagement person, I'm engaging, I mean, it's enough to put anybody off. What's the matter with just being a youth worker? I mean, it's been around for 50 years at least.
That may be the title. Chair.
Well, I hope it will, because actually the title is very important, because what it says about the person coming in can put you off before they've even opened their mouth. Anyway, thank you, Peter. And Richard, you looked as though you might be asking something.
Well, I'm always sort of poised.
And Ken, yes.
Thank you. Well, I will just say, I thank you, Peter. I think it's a very comprehensive report. I think it encompasses where we're at. I think they've had a challenging time, notwithstanding the COVID year, and they've got there. And now is the time to see whether they can prove themselves. And I wish them well in there as they seek to get more young people interested. I think the chairman makes a fair point on that. But the signs look good. And you know, this is so important for a town of Toaster's size to have such a facility as this. So let's wish them all well. And I'm glad the Healthy Communities team is going to be there to provide support and guidance along the way. You know, in a year's time, that will be maybe the time to see, well, how have they achieved it? How's it all gone? But I think it's all looking quite encouraging.
Good. And do Toaster Town Council know all about it, Richard?
Well, we follow it closely. Yes, we have the indeed and support what they're doing.
Good. Have you given them any money?
Oh, I wouldn't talk money at this occasion, no.
Okay.
We've given support. I mean, there has been plenty of money coming from the district, as we've been alluding to this evening.
Good, thank you. Ken?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. One of the things actually I've always been a little bit concerned sitting on the grants panel, the amount of funding that actually has been put to this particular project. I appreciate, and I think it's an incredibly worthwhile project. And when we've looked at the photographs, you know, it's been very well furnished, and also, you know, the facilities are very good. One of the things that I'm a little bit concerned is, okay, we appreciate that COVID has caused problems, but I find it quite disappointing that there hasn't had a real strategy put forward to actually how to encourage, you know, youngsters to come into this particular environment. And secondly, who actually, with regards to the upkeep of this particular facility, how is funds going to be generated to ensure that the upkeep and maintenance of this particular facility is ongoing?
Peter?
Thank you, Chairman. With regards to the ongoing maintenance and the upkeep, I'll have to come back to you with full details on that. I think you, as I say, in the report, I've evidenced how they are thinking about that commercial hire of the building as well during the unused space that they've got, the unused time that they've got. So they are looking at that as an option. Sorry, what was the other?
The other one was regards to during the COVID period, where in fact, you know, obviously you can appreciate you can't physically attract people into the location, but I would have thought I don't get a lot of confidence knowing that, that you've had the time to sit down and develop a real strategy to encourage youngsters to come into this location.
Chair, I can pick that one up. So
yes, please do, Chair.
Okay. So as a member of the grants panel, you will know that in the since these awards have been made, we've shifted with the grants panel's support, putting more conditions around grants. The grant funding and the conditions around this funding were around the physical works of the building, but you will be aware, those members on this committee that are also on grants committee will know that more recently we've put conditions around development of community development programs and plans alongside investment in facilities. This predated that shift. So we can't enforce that through the grant conditions like we've done more recently through our recent awards, but that's why we've tried to make the links with getting Yasmin onto, in the board meetings, observing, advising, and that is a key next project, isn't it, Pete, that they're going to be working on, is developing that plan, and we will support them as much as we can. They need to do it themselves as an organisation.
But I'm concerned that during the, as you say, the COVID scenario where nothing was really happening, it was the ideal opportunity to develop a very comprehensive strategy to encourage youngsters to come in, but nothing seems to have happened.
Well, I'm sure they must be working on it.
Well, they are working. They are working on it, and over the last 12 months, the team have built better, built those connections and making really good links with the team there. Hence, we've got Yasmin in the board meetings, and they're linking with South Northampton Youth Engagement. So we have made some progress, perhaps not as much as you would like, but we will continue to support them to continue that progress.
Good. And the last thought from me, I'll be pleased to know, is are they giving any consideration to actually working with what I would call young parents? Because often the boys, the young men, get left out of anything like that, and the young girls, their mothers, find things that are closed to them. And I think if you're at 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 and a young parent, the more opportunities you have to work with your peer group is very, very important, so that you feel you're not excluded from society just because you happen to have had a baby quite early, perhaps when you're at school or shortly afterwards. And I do think those opportunities are very important to the general well-being of both the mother and the father. So perhaps, I don't know, they've probably considered that, but I do think there's quite a gap that could be used, because they don't tend to fit into any organised, groups really.
We can certainly explore.
I mean, it may be absolutely mad, but I mean, I have known from my own experience that they do feel left out, and and their peers may still be at school or wherever they are, and it's quite lonely.
Of course, in the new unitary, we will have colleagues who are will be able to help us link more closely with the Children's Trust. We do have a worker that we work very closely with, Rachel, in the Children's Trust, but the unitary is only going to help grow that relationship more. And obviously, we'll be in a directorate alongside Public Health, which should also help on those matters too, Chair.
Good, thank you. Anybody else want to say anything? No, well, can we thank you, Peter and Joe? We do wish you well with the project. Well, we wish, and the everybody who's working there, and perhaps we will hear some way during the coming years how well they're doing. So I commend this report to you, scrutineers. Thank you. Now we move on to the heady excitement of the Richmond Road car park, I think, Andrew.
Thank you, Chair. So I've prepared a briefing note on this. As members will be aware, we actually purchased the site back in June 2020, put in a planning application for its development and the demolition of the co-op store itself in October 2020. I've appended the car park layout for members who want to have a look at that. And just to say that we are finalising the cost of the demolition of the building and the development of the car park. With regards to timing, again, members will be aware that we believe that the store has bats within it, and have actually got surveys going to be carried out in May and June 2021. So what we're doing at the moment is getting all the plans in place so that once that has been dealt with, and if the bats are either not there or they have been relocated, then we're ready to go. Just to say also that we have done some, the lighting has been installed, there's been some essential maintenance work carried out as well, and we are also progressing with a car parking order which will be in place very soon. Thank you, Chairman. That's all I've got to say on the matter for now.
Andrew, a question from my slightly more incontinent members who live in Paulsbury. They want to know when the toilets are going to be open, because they don't want to march into Waitrose, which is the nearest one to it. So can I give them hope?
Yes, you can. I'm not exactly sure on the date, Chairman, because I didn't come prepared for that itself.
June?
But
June?
I don't think that's far out. In that we'd got all the work sorted out as far as we could with regards to the contracts that were needed, so that we could actually press ahead as soon as we got council approval, which we got 24th of February. So in essence, I know that Michael Clark is actually looking to dot the I's and cross the T's, and we're certainly looking to have them on site this side of the 1st of April.
So I hope that once they are about to open, we'll have a very jolly press release set out to people so that they know, because I mean, you know, not joking about it, it is a matter of moment, literally, for some people.
Yeah, communications plays an important part in this, and there is a proper communications plan on this as well as giving publicity to it throughout this month.
Good, thank you, Andrew. Can we hear about the Toaster Relief Road then, please?
You can. Again, I've got a briefing note here, so just let me...
Chairman, I think there's a question from Councillor Pritchard's got his hand.
Oh, sorry.
Before you move
Where
on.
are you?
Yeah.
Still here.
Oh, sorry, you weren't on my screen, so I couldn't see you. You've gone black, in fact.
Am I there now? Yeah.
Yes, lovely.
I'm sure Andrew will be not disappointed when I ask the question once again, is what is the cost of the demolition and also the building of the car park? Because I'm quite disappointed that, you know, we keep asking these questions and all we ever get is, oh, they're being sorted out. And the second question actually will, I'm sure probably perhaps Martin could answer this, is what happens if this particular project will overrun from the budgetary point of view, which I just have this feeling that it probably will.
Okay,
thank you, Andrew.
Yes, sure. I understand the councillor's frustration about getting the cost for this finalised. I have that frustration as well. It is fair to say that we've gone backwards and forwards a number of times in that, again, members will be aware that to begin with, we were going to leave the building up and we were going to do the car park around it. We had to have quite extensive conversations about how that would work. Then it would be, then we'll take down the building and we'll try and leave the concrete base in place. And we had to do work then with regards to drainage and levels, which says, hang on, that isn't a sensible way of doing it. So what we've actually come down to the agreement now is that we will wait until that building goes down and we will do it in one go. That was better from a public relations point of view. It was also better from a construction point of view, and it was also better from a cost point of view. And now that we've actually got that final agreement, having gone backwards and forwards a number of times, that is why we are expecting to have the cost, and it is imminent. You know, I know that John Slacker actually met with them yesterday to try and finalise this. I was hoping to get the cost to me for tonight because I was anticipating that question. What I would say is that we do have the money in place with regards to that. It is within the property budgets, and without putting words into Martin's mouth, you know, what we have said there is that we are absolutely clear about the capital projects which are being dealt with. We do know that we won't be looking to do this in March. You know, we're in the beginning of March now, and it will be done after the ecological studies have been done. But the capital project will still be there. It will still be a priority, and the money will still be there as well. Is that all right, Martin?
And overrun?
Sorry?
And overrun in budget?
Well, again, because I'm probably closer to that than what Martin is in the first instance. I don't expect there to be any overrun. in that I believe we actually have the money there. But again, if it was an overrun, you have got your procedures in place in how you actually deal with that.
I must admit, these bats have got an awful lot to answer for, haven't they?
Martin, do you have anything to add on the finance angle?
Just to confirm what Andrew said, really, Chair, any balance that's left will be carried forward and be earmarked for that specific purpose. If there is an overrun, then that would need to go through decision-making process at West Northants, but remaining funds at the end of this year would be carried forward.
Yes, and my last question, Andrew, I asked about when the toilets will be open, but when will the whole development be ready?
I'm afraid I don't have the answer to that, because again, that's all part of the feasibility study that we're actually finalising.
Okay, right. Thank you. Then Toaster Relief Road, while you're in pole position.
Thank you very much. Again, another briefing note on it. Sorry, let me just find it. There we are. Okay. So again, I think all members will be aware that the developer has now started to build the road itself. I believe Councillor Bignell has shared some drone shots as well.
Yes, he did. Yes.
Of this. The application was received. Everything was fine with regards to that. The issues to be dealt with at the moment are with regards to the big roundabouts, the one on the A5 and the A43. They're taking some considerable amount of time to deal with. There's been a lot of assent required between Highways England and Persimmon and the County Council with regards to that, to make sure that all the statutory processes are dealt with. As it says within my note here, at the time of writing, there are only 2 left to be completed, but we still believe it's going to be some time before the roundabout 1 can be started, because there still needs to be consultation and publication of orders there. And Highways England were actually saying it's probably going to be another 3 to 6 months before that can start. However, the road itself is now being constructed, and the developer did say that they still intend to have this completed by February or March 2023. Just to say that Highways England has recalculated its contribution to the road. Safe Northants was going to be a banker for that, and we were in discussions with them some time ago about the trigger points for that. Highways England have now taken ownership of that, as I think they should have done it in the first instance, and will set those trigger points, and have asked for a proper plan to be set out of the development of a road, how that links into the roundabouts, so that they can actually set the trigger points for payment of their contribution. And finally, I know this is something which is dear to all members' hearts, is the fact that we are still asking for the detrunking of the A5 through Towcester. Highways England has said that it is not considering that at the moment. It could very well be that we actually have to wait until there's some kind of major road initiative in place to actually bring that up again. So it needs to be considered perhaps within a wider strategic review of the roads in Northamptonshire, which will take some time. But they have said that they will review the 2012 traffic modelling that we actually commissioned, so that they could, because within that it actually talked about a 20-mile-an-hour limit and a 7.5 ton weight limit along Watling Street. They didn't seem to be aware of that, so we brought that to their attention, and they said they'd come back to us with an answer on that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Andrew. The modelling, normally Highways England do it over 24 hours, which means that in the middle of the night, hardly anything's going along the A5, and that's why they assume that the traffic isn't that heavy.
I think it was more comprehensive than that back in 2012 when they did it. I believe it was it was modelled at various times throughout the year from my recollection of that model. So I would hope that wasn't the case.
Oh, good, thank you. Any further questions? Yes, Richard.
Yeah, I mean, thank you, Andrew. You all anticipated the question. I hope that Highways England may decide to talk to West Northants Council representatives about all this. I mean, it is ridiculous. It is a shame that we never managed to get Highways England before this scrutiny committee, Madam Chairman. I think we'd have had a bit of fun with them, wouldn't we?
Another failure. Yes, thank you. Right, can we move on? We've received those two reports. Can we move on swiftly to the annual scrutiny report, which Leslie has prepared, which is in your pack? You've seen it. And have you any comments you wish to give, Leslie? We have agreed that we'll attach the climate change things to it. Anything else anybody wants to alter? It will be tweaked after this meeting. Anything else anybody wants to say? Ken, are you waving to me or are you just flapping about?
Yes. With regards to from the scrutiny report, when we talk about the Silverstone experience, which is an item, second paragraph, it said the number of visitors to the centre had reached the predicted levels due to the lockdown restrictions. Should that say not reached?
Not. And we will get an update from Sally a bit later on, so we may figures.
Sorry, where was that, Ken?
Where it's got Silverstone, that's on page 85, and it's under the Silverstone experience exempt item.
Oh yes.
Second paragraph.
Had not. Yes, I will put that in there.
Okay.
Thank you. Anybody else? Any comments about our report, which will be going to the last meeting of South Northants Council on the, whenever it is, 24th, is it, of March?
Oh, just one thing, Chair. One of the things actually is with regards to our reports from scrutiny, is it possible that Democratic Services could take on the responsibility of actually forwarding our report to whichever scrutiny committee that is established inside the new council, so that they actually have got a record of what we've actually achieved or what our...
Yes, thank you, Ken. It'd probably be best if it goes to Democratic Services, because until...
It actually, the report actually goes to full council, doesn't it? So
yes, and then we can ask that it goes forward to wherever is the most appropriate place, because I don't know if they're only going to have one scrutiny committee or more than one scrutiny committee. I do not know yet, but we'll make sure that it goes forward, I think.
I guarantee they're actually looking at 3.
But say the annual report, scrutiny annual report, goes to full council. So at full council, it can then be recorded and sent forward to West Northants.
Absolutely. Does anybody else want to say anything? Yes, Elaine.
Yeah. With regards to the reports that we've just done, we've had the health report and the all the other reports that we've done this year. Are they going to be attached to this report from scrutiny report to go ahead to the other council?
Well, we can ask for that to happen. Yes,
yes, I think they should.
I think it's that will be a massive document, and they are all actually on the website, and they are all. If anybody wants to refer back to them, I have put a link in the report where they can find all of the agendas and minutes and reports that have been to committee. I think to put them all out there again and duplicate everything.
Yes, I just didn't want them to get lost in translation, as it were, and not be tied up properly. So I just wanted to ensure that if that's the case, that you're putting that in and put it in bold, and so that people can pick it up.
Yeah, I mean, everything that we've done over the year and all of the reports and everything are all on the website for anyone to look at that wants to see them. So this report here is just a roundup, really, of what the committee's done and results and anything. There is a bit at the end that I've put which is things to go forward to, so referrals to West Northants Council. So I've got a list of referrals there as well.
And the links.
Yes, yeah.
That's great. That's what I wanted.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is that all right? Now, the idea is that Leslie and I have a little chat and make sure we've tweaked anything that's come out from today that needs to be added, your attendance and various housekeeping things. So will you agree to that and endorse the report going forward to full council at the end of March? Yes? Yes.
Okay,
good.
thank you.
Thank you very much. I now would like to exclude the public and the press and anything else. And I know that Sally Reynolds has been sitting patiently because I think she logged on just after 6 o'clock, but I did tell her that it would be after 6:30. So I think Martin's in touch. Yes, with her?
Yeah, if we could just
If you
pause
can
a
bear
moment
with
while
me,
we
I will-
stop the live stream.
Right.